Overwatch has been on a bit of a transformational journey, and a weird one that is really the only way to describe it. And
That makes
of
it
course, the
sound
original
positive.
Overwatch. It's, trust me, I'm just giving the facts here, and then we'll lay into them. I'm holding back. Which is that the game was renamed to Overwatch 2, one of the only examples of that in gaming history, despite being effectively the same game, albeit with a couple of minor tweaks, because they were planning to roll out that robust PvE campaign with talents and progression and all sorts of story content that would have been completely separate from the Overwatch 2 that we're now playing, which is all PvP. Well, an announcement has come out from Activision Blizzard that they have all but scrapped the entirety of that roadmap and will not be releasing that mode as advertised, and instead are planning to essentially gut it. Yeah, it got nerfed. It got essentially gutted and kind of scrapped for parts with those mission. There'll be a little mission here or there that will be added in as a seasonal event. It's going to end up as part of the battle pass. And nonetheless, this has been I would say all but a death blow for the prospects of this game long term, as the critical reception to this has been just abysmal. There's not a single person defending this decision, and many people saying, you know what, that's kind of the end of it for me. So, John, James told me that you are the guy to speak about this. So, the stars have aligned. You're on QTB. Tell the world how you feel about this.
Gonna channel my Brad here for a second. I don't think it's gonna be the death knell. I think it's just kind of a realization that I think a lot of us like. Game development is a long and arduous process, and it's full of people who want to make the best decisions possible. They want to be creative, and you can't really be like. I'm trying to get on my high horse already. Jeez, no, but it's disappointing to hear this. But the fact that when you heard about even the prospect of Overwatch 2, even as an initial thing, where it's like, we're going to keep both games open, and if you want to play PvE stuff, you just got to, you're going to go into Overwatch 2, and it's going to share the same networks as everybody else, and there's not going to be a battle pass thing, and the single player progression, all that stuff sounds like such feature creep and stuff that's so high head in the clouds type of idealism of how you want to actually make something like that. So it's I find it not surprising at all that okay, we're scrapping everything and changing it, because when Overwatch first came out, I was one of the day one play. I've been playing it ever since then.
I was with you. Yep.
Yeah, and it was good fun because they advertised, hey, an online hero-based shooter, and that's what we got. And then all the stuff that we got from there on was bonus, new lore in levels where you can play these PvE type events and stuff. There's no doubt in my mind that they saw that and think, what if we made this better? But now it's at the point where it's what if we keep it the same? I don't want to put words in these guys' mouth because I'm sure that they're working hard and trying to do their best. But I'm disappointed with what they came out and said we're going to try and do this thing, and apparently they just didn't like it, or they thought people didn't want it, or I don't even know what kind of led to the decision, other than because I hope it's not money. I really hope it's not money, because with everything that's going around Activision Blizzard, my
definitely.
God.
Yeah, I mentioned that to Nick earlier today. I said something, I hope this isn't as a result of the lack of acquisition or the whole, the kind of delay, right? Because it's going to happen. For those of you who think it might not happen or it doesn't have any ground to stand on, just look at Microsoft's track record for buying other companies and come again and tell me that they're not going to be able to do this, especially for companies that are in need and no one else is willing to step up to the plate. Sony doesn't have the money, and Nintendo doesn't care enough to purchase them. They've got their own game that they're playing, right? And I agree with you. I think that this is extremely disappointing in terms of, any Overwatch fan. I made a video not too long ago talking about how I thought Blizzard was doing better at the time than Pixar in terms of creating new and unique characters and lore. And then it just started to kind of go downhill. There started to be a lot of changes. And I've mentioned this ad nauseum on the podcast, in regards to how Halo, tried to appease all of the pro players in the pro scene. And a lot of money was spent on the Overwatch League. Nick knows, I know, we were into it big at the time of its release, and we thought for sure this is the right way to do it. And then silly, stupid things started happening within the teams where they were completely unbalanced, or players would jump ship mid-season, and it just looks silly. It looks silly, and there's no other sport out there that really has those types of changes on a team roster as often as esports has seen it. And the same thing happened in Halo 5 Guardians. People were switching teams to get on the better team, and you can't do that. You can't build rapport with people in a pro scene with a flimsy team or a flimsy structure in how these teams are presented. And this has nothing to do with Overwatch 2's production, but obviously they listened to the community, and the community said, hey, we're not all pros here. We love the characters, we love the lore. I'd love to have more of this game in a single player context. And they basically said, okay, we'll give you that. And because we're giving you that, we're not going to be able to devote as much time to multiplayer. So for the past couple years, I know Nick is, he mentioned this earlier today, we have kind of put all of our eggs in this basket of hope of what might be delivered. And now we're not getting anything. It's like, sorry, you're not going to get that. It's something not, and this is becoming a trend, Nick. This is the thing that upsets me, right?
Yeah.
Because this isn't just Overwatch. Chris mentioned, Arcane, right? With Redfall recently coming under fire. I feel like in today's landscape, there's no middle ground for a mediocre game. You either put out crap or you put out gold.
Yeah.
There's no chocolate covered turds anywhere. Like, it's a problem, right?
Yeah. There's a threefold problem that's happened in the gaming industry before I get to the specifics with this one, then kind of zoom out to 10,000 feet. And one is that the scope of games for AAA games has gotten greater than ever, right? The expectations for what you have to have on a AAA game on day one, even if it's in a beta form with the concept of day one patches and live service games, what is expected of a high quality game continues to I think spiral out of control. It's not like it used to be where 20 people could get together for a year and crank out a AAA game like in previous gens. Now, what the other problems that you have are that there's a talent problem. There's a labor problem, right?
Oh,
because you have if Arcane Studio, I don't think it's a money issue for most of these companies, and that's not to bash the people that are creating these games. They're very passionate and they're very good at what they do. I don't think there's enough of them. You look at the amount of job openings and how people always tell you that in these industries, like you're always hopping from one job to the next. You never stay for too long in those circumstances,
It's
and I think
burn.
you end up getting
That's what they do.
Yeah. And so it's just tough to get people that know the systems, and you're constantly having to pass that knowledge on to other people coming in. And of course, Blizzard is no stranger to controversy, right? And the last thing I'll say is that, I mean, you look at the scope of video games and just everything that we come to expect from one on day one. Of course, they underdelivered. I'm sorry, I don't see any way that there was never a clear vision for the game in the first place. And this is where I want to get to the specifics of Overwatch, which is that the whole idea of unveiling Overwatch was a cover play, right? If you recall, there was the
Overwatch
Hong Kong
2.
controversy where Jay Allen or whatever his name is, that was the head of Blizzard
Jay
at
Allen
the time.
Brack, yes.
Yes, correct. Yeah, where they were caught essentially silencing people that were speaking out against the issues that were happening over in Hong Kong with the government and the people, and removing those players because of their relationship with the country. And what ends up happening is we get this. What's the term I'm looking for? Cover play. They try to get out ahead of it, where they say, okay, we've got, hey, we apologize. Oh, hey, look at this nifty thing. We get a cinematic for Overwatch 2, and not a whole lot of details behind it. And when you have fans that waited 2 years, like you said, Bruno, with zero content, right? They got Echo, and that was it. With the guise of, well, we're working on something else, and then for that something else to never materialize. I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny over what were they doing with that time, and is there really going to be enough that materializes in this battle pass with the bits and pieces? And they're going to sell it for money.
So
it's not going to be in the battle
jumps
pass.
In here,
sorry.
so remember how Overwatch got its start. It was initially called Project Titan. And they had built Project Titan up from the ground and basically nixed that entire project and reused the assets for Overwatch and created Overwatch. So as much as we want to say like, oh, this is a shocker, it's kind of their MO. Especially in regards to Overwatch. I don't think they've ever had a clear direction of where they wanted it to go. They had a great idea. They had great characters. They executed perfectly in a time period in which the hero shooter needed something amazing. Instead of continuing with something that added content to it, like a proper battle pass or anything, they nickel and dimed you for loot boxes, right? And then there was a whole controversy around that. So, it's really a shame because I love Overwatch and sank way too many hours into it.
Yeah,
like I've got probably over 150 hours on Diva alone. And close to the same on Junkrat. So, yeah. I mean, John, is there any redeeming move that they can do to kind of, you were more optimistic than the both of us. What can they do to get back on track?
Okay, I have separate perspectives on this because I have it as a player and I have it as someone who has just been a part of game development type teams, whether it was in college or just being as a 2D artist working for Zynga somewhere. Like, the one thing that they can do is they can actually back up the things they say, and it actually kind of, all these issues kind of come together pretty succinctly, actually. So we look at the way the industry is managed, where talent is turned and burned, and you're pushing people out who are burnt out and letting new people in who might be inexperienced, and they have to learn the job on the fly, all that kind of stuff. One of the biggest problems with Overwatch and Overwatch 2 is that, Jeff Kaplan was the director, and he was the guy who was generally seen as someone actually manning the ship. So when he left, like, who's really taking their place, and do they have the same type of consistency of that vision? Because, like, how a game is monetized and stuff, those really aren't in those discussions, like, on the creative side. They're more in, like, the executive side. So yeah. Overwatch 2 being free to play, and then, hey, have a battle pass, like, maybe people will accept that more than loot boxes now, since those kind of lost their luster. But when it comes down to actually making content, like, I think about literally any other developer out there. Nintendo is shows a JPEG for Metroid Prime 4, and then after years, presumably a long time in development, they're like, we didn't like it, so we're starting over, and we're going with Retro to do it instead of Namco Bandai, where it's like, those decisions can be made, and sometimes you can salvage stuff from those types of operations, but what ultimately I think is important is having someone who actually has the vision and it can actually take what's there and lead a team, like, because I keep coming back to the same thing where, like, look at things like Fortnite and how it's basically a perpetual living content machine that has pretty much perpetuated all the problems we see now in, like, every other type of video game. Like, sure, it's popular and people love it, and now even people, like, game companies themselves use it as, like, a form of marketing. Like, of course you're going to get a Leon Kennedy skin when RE4 Remake comes out. Like, I don't want to make this a conversation about Fortnite, but, like, just seeing how that has taken over just how people perceive video games, perceive the way that this content is actually made, I have no qualms thinking about how that just warps somebody's perspective on how games are even made. So what they have to do to salvage this is just actually do what they want to do. Like, have an actual idea, stick to it, and have the team stick to it as well. Like, rally the troops and push forward with it. Because if it's just another battle pass with widgets and stuff and keychains you put on your guns, like, that's not going to be fun for long. You're going to see player base tank like crazy. Like, I don't buy battle passes for that crap.
Yeah, I mean, you might buy, if you're like me, you might buy a couple, but or one, and if it's a slog to get through, like it was in Halo Infinite, where you had to put, numerous amounts of hours into challenges that, were very specific. It's clear that executives want to emulate the Battle Pass Fortnite success, but they're not willing to put in the work to that demands that type of service, right? The creative side of that, the extra skins, the extra map elements, guns, physics, and everything that goes around with the machine that is Fortnite.
They don't see the content, they see the money. That's what they see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. What's I think what the biggest travesty is of all, even though there was a huge conversation, in the media about and just the general public about loot boxes and the dangers of them, and certain countries outlawing them. Overwatch was one of the only people that were doing loot boxes right. In that you could, no matter what, you could earn them. You could literally earn them by playing, because you could get a set number per week, and that was the best part about Overwatch, was logging in, doing your weekly arcade things. But they changed that before they moved over, which is that if you got a duplicate of anything, you got a currency that you could then use to unlock anything. And there was very little that was locked behind. There's not, I'm trying this 0.5% chance of getting something. There was some stuff like that. But I like that you could save up your points, and then when a certain event came around for a skin that you wanted, you could spend it on that thing. Like, there was a path to it. I'm not saying it was perfect. I think it was one of the best examples.
They're Band-Aids. That's what they do.
Yeah. I mean, you could buy them outright. Of course you could. Yeah, they wanted you to, but I don't think very many people actually did. But now it's having access to those things and then turning around and seeing those same things sold in the store for $30 for a single skin is disheartening.
Well, and I will say crazy. This in defense of that, I, being an artist myself and dipped my toe in artisan work with handmade stuff, I know how many hours it takes to create some of the content. You see, and it when you basically put in maybe 60 to 120 hours worth of work, because it probably takes them at least a couple weeks, right? To, if they're going full steam ahead, right? I'm giving them 60 hours a week, maybe 2 weeks they can do something from concept to finish, maybe shorter. And then you only charge $30 for that or $20 for that. From an artist perspective, that's nothing. Right? Like, that's nothing. If I had to spend that much time and then go to an arts and crafts fair and sell it for dirt cheap, I would be disappointed. So similarly, I think that in my opinion, when it comes to like skin prices, if obviously there's been a lot of an attempt made, right? It's not just a recoloring of a skin, right? We've done something to add more flourishes. It's a completely different skin. And Overwatch is great for that. We've talked about that before, how Overwatch completely changed everything to theme whatever it is was going with that skin. And I think that was the right way to do it from an art direction style, and then to diminish that work and say, well, we're going to charge $20 for it. Some people don't want to do that. But like I say, go to any crafts fair and look at one of those handmade wooden pens that cost $120 to $200 some dollars.
Crazy. And
think to yourself, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not paying for that for a pen. But they don't see the hours and hours that goes into that. And, so there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line in how much you can charge versus like you said, John, putting a Band-Aid on it because we're not getting anything of real substance. We're just getting a skin instead of a map. Or instead of, something else to make the game progress.
Like, you have to weigh the values of what the actual player base wants versus what you actually want to create to enrich your product. So, like, when you say something like, oh, we could use new maps or even whole new characters and stuff like that, but then that also goes into the idea of, like, okay, well, how is this player going to shift the actual balance of gameplay? What type of map is going to actually be conducive for this type of playstyle or this character? So there's a lot more work and thought into that. It's way... I don't want to say easier to just crank out a bunch of skins or voice lines or stuff like that.
Yeah, it's easier. It's easy. Like, yeah, for sure.
And I think about and I also think about it from a consumer standpoint again, where like I think about Pokemon Unite and that $40 like whatever skin, like the one. The nerds love that one. I don't even know what it was anymore. I don't care. But it was a $40 skin for Pokemon Unite. I'm just like, someone paid that. Someone paid that. Did. They did.
Quit the Bill.